Think about your life right now. At this very moment, you are sitting completely safe, warm, and dry inside a sturdy modern home. Clean, filtered water flows instantly from a metal tap at the turn of a handle. If a massive storm starts brewing outside, you don't panic. You simply walk over and casually close a glass window. You live with the absolute certainty that no matter how hard it rains, a sudden, terrifying wall of water will not come rushing down to wash away your entire city tomorrow morning. You are safe, and you didn't even have to try. But now, let's strip all of that artificial security away. Take away the dams, the concrete walls, and the weather forecasts. Instead, imagine a heavy, relentless rain that simply refuses to stop for weeks, then months, and then years. Imagine watching the sea level creep up by dozens of meters every single day, relentlessly swallowing the fields, the forests, and turning your familiar green valleys into vast, empty, lifeless oceans. This wasn't just a bad seasonal storm. For thousands of generations of your ancestors, this terrifying water world was their daily reality. This nightmare peaked at the end of the last ice age, roughly 14,600 years ago. Planet Earth experienced a violent, sudden global warming event that scientists call meltwater pulse 1A. In a geological blink of an eye, colossal ice sheets and mountain glaciers collapsed all at once, violently unleashing billions of tons of trapped water directly into the oceans. The world didn't just flood, it transformed. History remembers this cataclysmic era as the age of the great megafloods. And here is the hard truth: humans are strictly land animals. Evolution did not equip us for a water world. We don't possess gills to extract oxygen from the waves, nor do we have powerful fins to swim across vast distances. If a human body is submerged in cold, turbulent floodwaters, muscles quickly cramp, hypothermia sets in, and the system fails completely within a matter of hours. On paper, when the oceans rose, our hairless, weak species should have been among the very first things to go extinct. Yet somehow, against all biological odds, they found a way to survive. The very first, most immediate challenge was a desperate, chaotic race against time to reach high ground. As the lowlands began filling up rapidly like a giant bathtub, ancient human tribes had to quickly learn how to read the changing landscape. They had to become experts at predicting the water's path, packing up their entire lives in minutes to migrate up steep mountain slopes before their homelands completely vanished beneath the waves. It was a brutal, exhausting climb, with the roar of rising water constantly echoing right behind them. But reaching the mountaintops didn't mean they were safe. In fact, the high ground quickly turned into a deadly geographical trap. As the water kept rising, massive mountain ranges were completely cut off, transforming into tiny, isolated islands stranded in the middle of an endless salt ocean. Very soon, all the land animals they used to hunt disappeared and the local plants withered away. The tribes were stuck, staring at an empty horizon, facing a slow and painful death by starvation. They had to make a terrifying choice: stay on the rocks and die, or somehow go out and conquer the open water. To cross an ocean, they needed a totally new kind of technology. They couldn't just throw a few loose logs together and hope for the best. The violent sea currents would tear that apart instantly. Instead, cavemen developed advanced engineering. They carefully selected specific, naturally hollow types of wood that offered maximum buoyancy. They stripped doughty, heavy-duty vines from the forests, weaving them into tight, ultra-strong ropes to bind the frame. Finally, they heated up sticky, thick pine resin over campfires, carefully smearing the gooey sap into every single crack to create a totally waterproof seal. They were building the world's first true floating survival platforms. But simply building a sturdy raft was only half the battle. Once you push off into the water, you face a new, terrifying problem. Where do you actually go when the entire horizon is completely flat, empty, and blue? Without land in sight, rafts would just drift helplessly in dizzying circles, carried away by blind currents until the crew ran out of fresh water. To survive, early humans had to study the natural world like scientists. They noticed that certain flocks of migratory birds always flew with absolute confidence in one specific direction. Our ancestors realized these birds were heading toward warm, unseen lands hidden just past the curved horizon, and they decided to follow them. But keeping a raft straight in a stormy sea is incredibly difficult. Violent waves would constantly spin the vessel around, knocking the long-haired hunters into the freezing water. So they invented a primitive but brilliant stabilization system. They took a massive, heavy round stone, wrapped it tightly in tough vines, and threw it off the back of the raft into the deep water. This crude stone anchor created constant drag under the surface. It stopped the raft from flipping over in heavy winds and kept the bow pointing straight forward. By adjusting the rope, they could finally steer. They had successfully turned a drifting piece of wood into a controllable ship. Even with a controllable ship, they ran into a cruel paradox. They were entirely surrounded by water, yet they were dying of thirst. The ocean was salt water, and drinking it meant swift death. To survive, early humans had to invent primitive rain catchers. They stretched large, cured animal skins across the center of their rafts, creating a wide funnel that would channel every precious drop of fresh rainwater into hollow gourds or stone pots. When the rain didn't fall for days, they resorted to squeezing the moisture out of raw fish eyes and drinking the blood of seabirds. It was gross, it was desperate, but it kept their organs from shutting down. But the physical challenges were nothing compared to the mental horror of the open sea. Imagine spending weeks on a small wooden platform looking out at a completely unchanging blue line. No trees, no solid ground, no landmarks. The human brain is not built for total isolation. Many began to hallucinate, seeing monsters in the waves or losing the will to paddle. To fight off this madness, tribes stayed packed closely together. They realized that loneliness on the open water was a death sentence. The simple act of huddling up, sharing body heat, and talking or chanting together kept them grounded. The person who isolated themselves on the edge of the raft was usually the first to give up and slip into the deep. Ultimately, the single greatest weapon that saved humanity from drowning wasn't made of wood or stone, it was information. The tribes that survived weren't just lucky, they were the ones who kept records. Wise elders with long gray beards would sit inside dark caves or on open rafts, carefully carving primitive symbols into pieces of wood or stone. They drew maps of the currents, marked safe high peaks, and recorded weather patterns. They were transforming their terrifying lived experiences into a structured, reliable database of survival knowledge. But how do you preserve a database when you don't have libraries or computers? You turn it into culture. Ancient humans encoded this vital flood data into highly memorable songs, tribal dances, and sacred storytelling rituals. For hundreds of years, every young child grew up chanting the exact instructions on how to build a waterproof raft, how to tie a stone rudder, and which mountain peaks would never submerge. These weren't just fairy tales told around a campfire. They were critical, life-saving technical manuals passed down through generations by the power of collective memory. Many centuries later, the planet stabilized and the massive floodwaters finally began to slowly recede. As the oceans shrank back, long-haired humans stepped down from their isolated mountaintops and stepped off their wooden rafts. But they were no longer the simple land foragers they used to be. The megafloods had fundamentally upgraded them. They returned to the dry valleys as master navigators, expert builders, and advanced thinkers, ready to plant crops and build a whole new world on top of the hyperfertile mud and rich silt that the floodwaters had left behind. This ancient watery war forced scattered human tribes to cooperate on a massive scale, laying down the actual foundations for the world's very first global maritime trading civilizations. Today, we live in modern cities safely protected by colossal concrete dams and high-tech satellite warning systems. We take dry ground, steady weather, and clean tap water completely for granted. But never forget, the only reason you are standing here today, warm, dry, and safe, is because your long-haired ancestors fought and won the most desperate, impossible war against a drowning planet. Every time you turn on a tap, you are proof of their victory.